What if Ahsoka was reborn with all of her memories? Now the start of the story is ambiguous, since we don't know what happens at the end of Ahsoka's life, when she dies, and what she does after the events of Ahsoka Season 1. Hopefully we will know with Ahsoka Season 2 being filmed soon, as well as the Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming out next year. After Ahsoka's death, her vision goes black, expecting to be transported into the living force. However, she opens her eyes to see she's woken in a straw hut as a baby. She can't move out of her cradle as a woman of the Togruta species stands over her, no doubt her mother. She's confused. She feels as if she should recognize the people and structures around her, but she doesn't. She knows her brain does, but these memories are hidden deep away from her consciousness as she starts to realize that they must be from when she was a baby. Ahsoka thought she was dreaming and played out the dream with her mother, siblings, all of whom she'd forgotten, and enjoyed the time she spent with her people. She thought the dream would end, but it didn't. Days passed on her world, but everything changed when a ship descended towards their village. The ship was run with excitement. They didn't get many visitors, especially off-world. They greeted the ship as out walked Jedi Master Plo Koon. Ahsoka couldn't believe it. She knew Plo was the one who found her, but now she's really living out the exact moment. And it's here she starts to believe that maybe she's not dreaming. Maybe the Force has given her a second chance, and after her death, she has been reborn. Ahsoka is taken to the Jedi Temple, where she lives out her days as a youngling, learning everything about the Force. However, she's already learned it all in her past life. She thinks about what she'll do now. Since she's been reborn, she has the opportunity to change the events of the future. She thinks about what happened previously, how the galaxy totally changed and went down the dark path due to her master, Anakin, and his actions. She always wondered, what if she stayed by his side? Whether she could have done something to prevent his fall to the dark side. But now she realizes she has the opportunity to do just this. Save her master from the dark side and ultimately save the galaxy. She knows everything, how Palpatine was the Sith Lord and the one behind the Clone War, but also how he manipulated Anakin to becoming Darth Vader and turn him against his master Obi-Wan, the Jedi, and his wife Padme Amidala. Ahsoka had met adult Luke and Leia many times in her previous life and starts to wonder what the galaxy and Jedi could have been if Anakin never turned to the dark side and Luke and Leia were trained as Jedi. That Anakin could have been the one to reform the Jedi Order and steer the galaxy in the right direction. Ahsoka vows to herself that with her second opportunity, she will not fail and must save Anakin. The problem was Palpatine, and Ahsoka knew she would have to deal with him. She couldn't do anything as a young child, and obviously would have to wait until she was older. But at that point in the timeline, Palpatine would be so entrenched in the Republic that the word of mouth from a mere child would mean nothing. She could reveal to the Council that she had a premonition or Force visions. However, even if the Council believed her, what could they do? Arrest the Chancellor? The Jedi would be called traitors, and that doesn't keep Palpatine away from Anakin. She gets an idea, and she knows what to do. She remembers all of her Force teachings and powers, and will use this to garner Palpatine's attention and get him off of Anakin's back. At this stage, Anakin hasn't been found by the Jedi, and she must distract Palpatine away from him when they do. To do this, Ahsoka begins to enact her years-long plan. Slowly as a youngling, she starts revealing that she's more powerful than her classmates. She starts doing things with the Force that someone of her age should not be able to do. Lift objects, connect to animals, and other tasks. This instantly caught the attention of the masters involved with training the younglings, who reported this to the Jedi Council. Slowly over the following weeks, the high-ranking masters came in to watch the youngling Ahsoka, who could use abilities with the Force that no one before her could do. Whispers started echoing through the temple. A new Jedi youngling has been found that might be the strongest of the next generation. This went on for years, Ahsoka slowly exposing her true power, and finally, the time came when this caught the attention of the new Senator Palpatine. Palpatine, as a senator, visits the Jedi Temple on business, and on his way back, asks to see the younglings' training quarters. He watches them with a gleeful eye, focusing on the youngling Togruta that he's heard rumors about. He watches as her abilities with a lightsaber far surpass someone of her age, as she juggles all sorts of objects around the room, eyes closed with the Force. After this display of her strength, Palpatine claps and walks up to Ahsoka, telling the youngling that she's very clever for her age, and they'll watch her career with a great interest, as Ahsoka responds, saying she will be the strongest of all the Jedi, something she knows Palpatine would like to hear. Palpatine leaves and goes to his meeting, as Ahsoka realizes that the first contact was a success. Palpatine latched onto the bait, and now she only has to draw him in. Palpatine goes home that evening and starts to consider that Ahsoka could be a future apprentice of his. Already at such a young age, she has ambitions of power, similar to how he was, which is the perfect origins for the Sith. Over the following couple of years, Palpatine meets and watches Ahsoka train every time he comes to the temple. They saw each other more and more and greeted each other as old friends, calling each other by their first names. Palpatine would constantly praise young Ahsoka's power, encouraging her to become the strongest of all the Jedi, as Ahsoka agrees, saying she will not stop until she has achieved this goal. Palpatine's interest in her had risen exponentially, and he started to formulate her apprenticeship into his grand plan. She would become his apprentice, the protege of the Jedi Order would be his, and with her by his side, together, they can defeat the Jedi and rule the Empire. However, the day came when Anakin was brought back to the Jedi Temple, proclaimed as the Chosen One. However, Palpatine had already been planting the seeds of deception in Ahsoka for years, and was skeptical about starting a game with Anakin. He considered Anakin as an option, especially if his power started to far exceed Ahsoka. However, he didn't believe that this would be a problem. The events of the Phantom Menace are carried out as normal. Qui-Gon Jinn is unalived by Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan enacts his revenge and is given permission to train Anakin. Palpatine seriously considered manipulating Anakin as well, but doing this to both Ahsoka and Anakin would be too obvious to the Jedi. It would garner too much suspicion and might cause unwanted prying eyes. He had a decision to make, Anakin or Ahsoka, and he chose the one he's been manipulating for years already. Meanwhile, at this point, Ahsoka was already 5 years old, and Palpatine had now become Chancellor, and she was taken to visit him very often. He told the Council that the Jedi who would no doubt be the strongest of the next generation should learn early how the galaxy should be run, and Ahsoka is essential in this. Over the following 2 years, their relationship grew, as their bond was strong. However, at 7 years old, Ahsoka's power that she displayed essentially qualified her to become a Padawan, and she was chosen by none other than Plo Koon. This distanced her from Palpatine to some degree. However, Palpatine wasn't unhappy by this. Her power in the Force would now increase exponentially under the tutelage of a Jedi Master, and when she returns to Coruscant between missions, he can corrupt and override his teachings regarding the dogmatic Jedi philosophy. In the Jedi Order, Anakin and Ahsoka were regarded as the future of the Jedi, the two strongest of their generation, and because of this, had many training sessions together. They were extremely competitive, but got along extremely well. Anakin saw Ahsoka as his younger sister that he never had, and Ahsoka missed her master deeply, remembering what he was like before he became Darth Vader. This continued over these 10 years, as they became the best of friends, and both of their powers grew exponentially to the point where they were equal. During this time, Palpatine and Dooku were carrying out their plans, whilst Palpatine thought he was also manipulating and slowly seducing Ahsoka to his side, planting the seeds of ambition in her. To Palpatine, they had formed a good friendship, a basis for her conversion, but Ahsoka was giving Palpatine everything he wanted, and on the outside, appeared to be persuaded by his manipulations, but was secretly manipulating the manipulator. She felt joy in this. It's double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. She was still the most powerful Jedi of her age, still holding some of her strength in reserve. At the end of her life, Ahsoka would have been extremely strong, powerful enough to sit on the Jedi Council, yet under the tutelage of Plo Koon, her power had continued to rise. She was slightly stronger than Anakin at this point, which is exactly what Palpatine wanted. The time of the Clone War begins, as the galaxy is thrust into the chaos of war, and Palpatine uses this to increase Ahsoka's power even more. But now is when her endgame comes into play. She needs to use the war to expose Palpatine to the Jedi and the galaxy, to ensure that he doesn't become Emperor. Anakin and Ahsoka's friendship is strong, and she's satisfied that she's pulled Palpatine's gaze away from him, and that there's no risk to him being turned to the dark side. However, to strengthen their relationship and entrench the trust between them, Ahsoka reveals to Anakin that she knows he and Padme are married. Anakin was shocked, questioning how she could know this, but Ahsoka spares him the details and ensures that she's happy for him and will not reveal his secret to anyone. This was extremely good for Anakin. He had someone to talk to, someone else to confide in, and be 100% truthful with. But now is when the difficult part of her plan comes into play. She has to manipulate Palpatine into revealing himself, and she does this by slowly voicing her doubts about the Jedi to him. She does this over the first 2 years of the war, explaining how she's slowly begun to realize that the Jedi cannot protect the galaxy, and the war might actually be their fault due to hundreds of years of neglect of the citizens of their galaxy. Palpatine thinks these revelations are a result of his manipulation over the years. However, he's severely mistaken. She does this all throughout the second year of the Clone War, and Palpatine starts to press on these comments, asking Ahsoka that if the Jedi are the problem, what is the alternative? Surely the Republic cannot win the war without the Jedi. At the beginning of this, she said that she did not know, but slowly started implementing ideas that Palpatine would like to hear. That maybe there should be someone with more power, someone who could make all the hard decisions for the galaxy, rather than leaving everything to a corrupt and ineffective Senate vote. Palpatine liked this, as their philosophical conversations went deep, but in one final meeting was when everything changed. When Ahsoka very purposefully revealed that she had been reading up on the Sith, that the Jedi didn't allow her to learn about them. Palpatine tells her the Sith are a particular interest of his, and reminds Ahsoka that history is written from the point of view of the victors, and to not believe everything the Jedi tell her about them. Ahsoka asks Palpatine if he can teach her what he knows of the Sith, and Palpatine thought in this moment that his victory was assured, that she was now down the dark path, but he was mistaken. Over the following sessions, Palpatine starts teaching her the history of the Sith, following with a deep dive on their philosophy, imploring to her that the Sith are not inherently evil, and also want to rule the galaxy for the greater good of the people. This goes on for months, until eventually, Palpatine reveals to Ahsoka that he is the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, and desires to rule the galaxy, and wants her to join him by his side. Ahsoka of course already knew this, and this moment was the culmination of her own grand plan. She acted well, appearing surprised, but not shocked or scared, but rather intrigued. She admits to Palpatine that she had suspicions he was a man of greater power, and Ahsoka pretends to join him, pledging her life to the Sith. Palpatine dubs Ahsoka Darth Shira, and he believes he now has everything he needs to carry out Order 66 and end the war. However, Ahsoka is now halfway through her plan. Palpatine trusts her, and now she's got to force him to expose his true identity as a Sith Lord. Ahsoka still has to go on missions for the Republic. However, Palpatine sends her a message that he wishes for her to join him at an address, no doubt a building found in the industrial region of Coruscant, to meet with his other apprentice, Dooku, to introduce her and discuss the full scope of the Sith plan. Ahsoka tells her master she will be there. However, she discreetly returns to Coruscant the day before the supposed meeting. She goes to the address and scopes it out, detecting the location of the cameras and motion sensors, and uses the Force and her stealth to bypass them and enter the building, to set up her own discreet security cameras and audio recording devices. She does this without detection, and the next day returns to the same address for the meeting with Sidious and Dooku, but this time she doesn't come alone. That morning, Ahsoka stood in front of the Jedi Council and revealed to them that she knows the location of both Darth Sidious and Count Dooku. She cannot explain to them how she knows, but implores for them to join her, that if she does, they can defeat the Sith today and end the war. Rumbles start in the chamber. How could Ahsoka possibly know this? But Plo Koon has faith in his apprentice and pushes for the council to join her, and they agree, as she promises to tell them everything after they return. They set their plan in motion and wait out for the signal. Ahsoka enters the building to see Palpatine standing next to Dooku. She bows, and Palpatine introduces Ahsoka to Dooku, and together They begin discussing the final stages of their plan is in motion. The Republic is defeated. The people of the galaxy blame the war on the Jedi, and Order 66 is on the brink of activation. All they must do now is engineer the conflict so that Master Yoda and Anakin Skywalker are off-world, and then they'll execute the order, and finally then, the galaxy will be theirs to rule. Ahsoka presses a button on her wrist, as they now have the footage of Dooku and Palpatine conspiring together, as in rush all of the members of the Jedi Council, lightsabers ignited. It took a second for Palpatine and Dooku to register the situation. How was the Council here? How had they found him? As he looks at his so-called apprentice, Ahsoka, smirking back towards him, as he realizes in this moment that he's the one who's been manipulated. His lips curl as he goes to swing at her with his blade, as she ducks under and pushes herself back as the Council rush in to engage the Sith. The battle was short. The Sith were strong. However, even with their combined strength, they were no match for the might of the Jedi Council. They were subdued, arrested, and brought back to the Jedi's prison cell. The Jedi presented the evidence Ahsoka had gathered of Palpatine conspiring with Dooku and their ultimate plans for galactic domination, and the Senate supported the Jedi in their arrest of the Chancellor, which undid all of his constitutional amendments. This was the first step in the Separatist defeat, but this essentially turned the tide of the war in their favor. Ahsoka stood in front of the Jedi Council and was congratulated for her role in defeating the Sith. They simply could not have done it without her. They asked her how she knew of their location in the industrial region. However, she was forced to lie, telling the tale that the Force came to her in a vision, revealing the truth about the Sith, and in response, manipulated Palpatine into trusting her and turned that trust against him. After the war officially ended, Ahsoka visits Anakin at their home as they celebrated that their time of fighting was over. They talk a bit about the future of the Jedi Order. They both agreed that the Jedi had some blame to play in the war in the first place, but they doubt the Council will see it that way. However, Ahsoka suggests that with their influence, as the so-called future of the Jedi Order, together they can lead the Jedi down the correct path. Anakin says he'd love to do this. However, he'll have to leave the Order when he and Padme start having children. But Ahsoka says that she believes the Jedi will make an exception for him, that his children will symbolize the first step of change within the Order and be the beacon of hope around the galaxy that the people need. Ahsoka looks across at Anakin and Padme and can't help but shed a tear. The last 15 years were long and filled with constant doubt whether she was doing the right thing, but as she looked over at Anakin and Padme, laughing and in love, she knew it was all worth it. Thank you for watching. At Fantasy Sabers, we're launching the Chosen One affordable version. This is almost an identical replica of the Chosen One saber with just a few tweaks, but it's still packing all of its power and glory. And to celebrate, for the first 2 weeks of its launch, we're giving away one for free with every saber order. Just choose your saber, add it to the cart to claim your free saber. Don't miss out on this limited time only sale.